So welcome, welcome. I want to tell you that we have sponsors, we have experts every day for you. We've got so much stuff because you're going to get my point of view, you're going to get the point of view from the actual heavy hitters in the sponsor industry, people you can't even get on the phone. We have brought them here to you. So here's 3 steps to sponsor success. You want to prepare, you want to propose, we're going to talk about all of this, and you want to promote your sponsors. That's like what it's all about.
Okay, hi everybody, I'm Tashana Hannah. So my dream is to open a transitional home for single mothers who are in foster care, so that way they can have somewhere to raise their child in a safe environment and they don't have to worry about it being taken from the system. I myself was in the system, and I got pregnant with my first child, and I was in a transitional home. So my transitional home will help the women be self-sufficient after 3 years, the ages of 16 to 28. And I want to make it like a community. So not just a home, but an actual community. If you could put it in perspective of like a senior citizen living home, they have almost everything they need there. So that's the type of community that I'm wanting to have. And to really make this a reality, right now I do have my Single Moms for Success program. It's 10 weeks, and that does help them become self-sufficient, but they need more, right? So they need more interaction. And of course there will be rules and everything that we will have to have, but in order to get this started, I would actually need land. I would need a foreclosed, maybe senior citizen building, and capital to raise the funds to actually get it going. So that is my dream, and I know it's going to come to. I am in Georgia, Atlanta, Georgia.
Okay. All right. Give it up for Hannah in the chat. And by the way, I want to try to get as many people to speak as possible. So when you do your shares, and you'll learn this in the media section too, you got to talk in sound bites. So we're going to make it short. We're going to make it sweet so we can hear from as many people as possible.
My name is Alex P. Plasky, and I would like to empower and inspire the youth market. I was born into homelessness. I lost my dad to cancer at age 9, went through 4 to 5 separate foster homes, and then had a spinal cord accident when I was 16. So what I do is I teach resilience to students, that no matter what circumstance you go through, you can still have a very happy and successful life. So I would like to inspire 150 high schools and middle schools this upcoming school year through sponsorship.
Thank you, Alex. And despite all of his challenges physically, Alex is going to be here. And when you read his story, it's just so inspiring where he came from and where he is now, and that he has beautiful, beautiful dreams for the life change that he wants to create for you. All right, so we're going to move on. So you've shared your big dreams and what it would take to make it a reality. This is why most people don't reach their big dreams. The first one is lack of resources. We talked about that. You know, you're going to take money. It's going to take capital and resources. Perfectionism. Okay, drop it if you're a perfectionist. I am a recovering perfectionist. So, you know, perfectionism is really going to get in your way, and it's just not a good thing. And perfectionism is just another mask of fear. And fear is another reason why most people don't reach their big dreams. And we're going to be talking about that a lot. And I'm sure you see that a lot. It is a myth right now that sponsors are not funding. A lot of people have asked me that. Hey, there's been a pandemic. Are sponsors still funding? You're going to hear from our speakers. You're going to hear from our experts that yes, they are still funding. And this just happened in the last year. This is the Philadelphia 76ers, and they got Founders, which is a brewery. They got a watch company, BetMGM, which is sports betting, and Verizon. So here's what sponsors will fund: your business, your projects. Where are my business owners? Give me a woo woo. Give me a woo woo. Okay. You're speaking, your book or your show. We have a lot of people with shows, a lot of people with entertainment, a lot of people doing podcasts and radio shows. Where are my show people? Where are my speakers? Where are my authors? Whoa, okay, there you go. Your videos, your blogs, your podcasts, virtual and live events. Where are my event people? Event people? Yes. Sports and athletics. Where are my athletes? People in sports. All right. And then your nonprofit. Where are my nonprofit charities?
Woo woo. Right here.
Yes. And the real savvy nonprofits have absolutely mastered the art of corporate sponsorship. One sponsor equals thousands of donors. The usual process is somebody is so passionate about their cause that they reach into their wallet and they self-fund their nonprofit, but eventually you're going to run out of money. So that's why you have to have fundraising in place in the form of corporate sponsorship. Here's what sponsors give you. Money you don't have to pay back with no credit checks. And when I learned that sponsors were not going to check my credit, I said, wow, hallelujah, because mine was so bad. And you know, I've really never met an entrepreneur with perfect credit. Now, why don't we have good credit? Because we are risk takers and it shows up in our FICO score. Media and public relations opportunities. You're going to see that sponsors have a bigger media budget than you do. Okay, free stuff, it's called in-kind sponsorship, and there's value in in-kind sponsorship. You can get hotel rooms, you could get cars, you could get airline flights. So it is budget relieving. Amazing connections with key influencers. I hang out in the world of entrepreneurs like you guys, but when I work with sponsors, I get to peek back behind the curtain and see how big money operates and apply that to my small business. And then lastly, but credibility, up the yin yang. So when you put on your website, your marketing materials sponsored by, and then you put some leading edge companies there, you're going to get more clients, you're going to get more donors, you're going to get more listeners to your podcast, more people reading your book, etc. And then lastly, lifestyle and freedom, as we've seen. You get to really have a lifestyle business where you do what you want when you want. So here's other things you could do with sponsors. You can avoid the cash flow roller coaster. And if you have been in business for 10 minutes, you know the cash flow roller coaster. That poor little girl is on it. 1 month, the money's flowing in and there's rainbows outside and birds are singing and life is wonderful. And then the next month, you are absolutely struggling to make your expenses. I went once and I saw a speaker and she said, shine your light for the world. And I said, lady, I can't even keep the lights on in my business. So I have definitely been there. Create profitable and life-changing events. Now, why did I underline the word profitable? Because one of the biggest secrets in the seminar and the event business is that people do great events and they get rave reviews and people say, oh my God, your event changed my life. But that person who did the event lost money. That is a tragedy that never has to happen, and it will never happen to you after this seminar, okay? Because I have never lost money on an event because all of my events have been sponsored. I'm on a mission that this will never happen to anybody here. And then add creative funding to your dreams. And if you joined us a little late, what we did was we wrote down our dreams and we shared them with each other and what would it take to make the dream a reality. So the old model of sponsorship was between you and your sponsor. The new model of sponsorship is you, the sponsor, and the audience. And we're going to talk a lot about audience. because even if you don't have a following like right now, like I didn't at the beginning, have your eye on who your audience is going to be. We want you to pay yourself first, because a lot of people on our events say, hey, can I take money from the sponsor fee? Absolutely. That's why we want you to ask for really good money, you know, at least 5 figures, and the 6, maybe 7 figures from your sponsors, because we want you to ask for enough money that you can pay yourself, not only pay yourself, but pay yourself well. Because if you don't pay yourself, how long can you do the life-changing work that you do? We're all in different businesses here, but we are all in the life-changing business. So remember to put enough money in there to pay yourself. So here's my first sponsor. I am normally, now I'm in Las Vegas. Normally I am in Los Angeles, California. What do you think of with Los Angeles, California? Traffic, right? So I'm in a traffic jam and I'm cursing the traffic jam. I'm hot, I'm tired, I want to get home. But I look up and I see this billboard for Bank of America. And I said, oh my God, what if they could be a sponsor of mine? Here's the problem. I had no sponsors. I had an idea in my silly little brain. And I didn't know if my event had legs. I didn't know if people would show up. So I came home and guess what I did? Remember when I said that fear stops a lot of people from reaching their big dreams? Well, fear got a hold of me by the neck. And what I did was I basically buried my wish to get Bank of America as a sponsor. I said, you know what? I'm going to make a fool out of myself. They're going to reject me and I don't want any part of it. I buried it for 2 weeks, but my mission to help people was so strong that I did manage to pick up the phone. By the way, the phone looked like it weighed 250 pounds. I called Bank of America and I got the guy who could greenlight a sponsorship. He said, Linda, come on in. So I brought him, write this down, my sponsor proposal, because we're going to be talking about the sponsor proposal. By the way, at that time, I had a clunker car. The paint was peeling, the upholstery was shot. I parked it 2 blocks down so nobody would see it. I put on my one good suit, I put on my heels, and I marched into Bank of America with my sponsor proposal. Thank God there was a desk between us because I was so nervous. My knees were knocking, my hands were clammy, but I did show him my proposal. And he said, yes, we will sponsor you. So Bank of America became my very first sponsor. And when he said he would sponsor me, I wanted to scream, but I'm in a fancy bank building. So I wiped my hand off the back of my one good suit because it was all sweaty. I shook his hand. I said, thank you very much. Walked 2 blocks to my car. And then when I got in the car, I did the happy dance. So we're going to get sponsor ready. We're going to create your plan. So we're going to really do billionaire thinking. Who's that? Who's this in that I'm showing? Elon Musk, okay? And as we know, he owns Tesla, and now he's a player in social media. I think today's billionaires are really fun. You know, we got Jeff Bezos going up to space. We got this guy. But billionaire thinking is you want to be teachable. One of the most dangerous headspaces to be in is to think that you know it all. So we want you to come to this event with the wide-eyed innocence of a child and just absorb everything like a sponge. We want you to be decisive, okay? Most of the successful people that I have met in my 20-year career in sponsorship make quick decisions. So be really decisive, and then be creative. My art school training serves me every day because I think the more creative you are, the more successful that you're going to be. So I want to know what's important for you to learn. Let's see, tried and true techniques, all right? Creating a sponsor proposal, marketing, all right, closing the sponsors, the most efficient way to get sponsors, What sponsors are looking for, you'll find that out today. All right, the fast track, all of the above. Okay, thank you. All right, so here is the definition of sponsorship. It is not the industry definition, because the industry definition I don't like. It's real clunky, but this is my definition. Connecting a company to people who buy things. So if you know people who buy things, you can get sponsors. So when I was starting out with the Women's Small Business Expo, I said, hey, Mr. and Ms. Sponsor, how would you like to connect with the biggest spending block on the planet, which is women? And that's how I got my first sponsors. So that's what you want to do. And by the way, I'm going to be talking about women from time to time, but we've got men, we've got women on the call. The sponsor techniques, the tips that I'm going to be giving you are universal to everybody. That's just my experience. So this is little Alex Scott, and she is the lemonade stand girl. Unfortunately, Alex was very sick with cancer. And she was in and out of the hospital, and she told her parents, she says, well, I'm going to go down the street and I'm going to sell lemonade, and the money that I make, I'm going to give to the hospital that's treating me. And they said, great, honey, but you're not going to make much money. As you'll see, she was selling it for 50 cents a glass. Well, the media got hold of her story, and she wanted to raise $1 million for cancer research. So people found out about her, and Volvo sponsored her dream. Now, why Volvo? Volvo is a very family-friendly brand. So they had Alex's lemonade stands in their Volvo dealerships. If you want, you could create your own Alex's lemonade stand event. They give you all the instructions on the website, and you could raise money for cancer research. This little girl is 8 years old. So do you think if an 8-year-old can do this, that you can do this? That's something that I hear from people a lot. Oh, this is so complicated. I don't know. I'm going to break it down into easy steps for you. So they have helped more than 300 cancer research projects, and they have raised over $60 million to fight childhood cancer. Remember, her original goal was to raise $1 million. So now they're over $60 million, Alex's lemonade stand. So I just wanted to show you that a child can do this. So your property, this is what you're going to know. You have a property. That is the one vocabulary tool that I am going to give you. The vocabulary, it's the entity available for sponsorship. It is also known as the sponsee or the rights holder. So you are also a rights holder or a sponsee rather than a sponsor. Okay, so this is Empower Field in Denver. Empower is a healthcare company, and they got what's called naming rights. So they named Empower Field at Mile High Stadium. That is Sofia Vergara from Modern Family. And you can be a spokesperson for a brand like she is. You know, you don't have to be a big celebrity with a killer body like hers to be a spokesperson. They're going toward, you know, more everyday grounded people, because look what's happening in the news. A lot of big celebrities are imploding right now, and they're, you know, we're finding out that their character is not so good. Entertainment can be sponsored. Where's my entertainers? People with shows, podcasts, all that, radio. So this is one of my favorite artists, Ed Sheeran. You're going to hear a lot about pop culture, because we really want you to pay attention to what's going on in pop culture. And his pop-up holiday party last year, this was a virtual event, was sponsored by State Farm Insurance. Now, I'm going to get a little chicky with you for a few minutes, okay? Because anybody watch the new reboot of Sex and the City and Just Like That? So basically, this new reboot Oh my God, look at this product placement that they did in the reboot. I mean, Snapple and Snuggle and Samsung and Persil and Xbox and Salonpas. But the biggest one was Peloton, because if all of you know the story of Carrie and Mr. Big, unfortunately, he died while he was working out on a Peloton bike. And their stock went down. So, you know, you want to show sponsors, hey, if you sponsor me, this is why it's going to be good for your brand. The stock came back up, and there's a big community now on Peloton. This is esports. How many people in esports? We got esports people here. So esports can even either be played as an individual or as a team, and this is one of the big teams in esports, 100 Thieves. The events, CatCon is coming back live. They did virtual for a few years, and you'll see their sponsors, including Nationwide Insurance, and they got, talk about eye candy. They've got the Australian firemen with holding little baby kittens. NASCAR is one of the biggest properties in sponsorship, and since their inception, their model has been sponsorship. So the car is sponsored, the driver is sponsored, his hat is sponsored, his shirt is sponsored. We just did Coachella. Coachella just happened. Anybody watch Coachella? No? Okay, so Coachella had all these really, really cool sponsors. Now, sponsors will fund virtual events. In fact, 80% of sponsors will fund virtuals. And then here's one, Impact. This was a virtual event for enterprise, IT, information technology. Books can be sponsored. My authors, if you have a book, you could get sponsored. And here's the cool thing, the book doesn't have to be printed. Okay, if your book, the book doesn't have to be finished or printed. So if you're working on a book, you don't need to wait till you finish the book to get it sponsored. Here's one thing you do need though. You do need the cover art for your book. So you need to have that book cover designed. Of course, you need to have an idea of what the book is about, but you could get sponsors even before the book is finished. If you are a speaker, you could get sponsored. And now the new model of speaking is that it's a tool and not a destination, because at one time speakers went from gig to gig. Now speakers are really working on the recurring revenue model. So you're speaking in order to be a lead generator, in order to get clients, sell programs, get funded by sponsors, etc. Nonprofit businesses. This is one of my clients, Carolyn Gross. She was diagnosed with breast cancer, a very aggressive form, stage 3. Doctors told her she would need a complete mastectomy, getting the breast cut off. And she said, I don't think I want to do that. And basically found out how to heal her breast cancer through alternative medicine. So she's got a cancer center. She's got a foot detox company, because foot detox is part of her methodology. Vitamins, so her topic, a natural organic tea. So I want to show you Carolyn, because her topic is a little bit woo-woo. She's basically appealing to the conscious consumer market. Everybody thinks, oh, I have to have a business topic. No, you do not. You can do something like this and get sponsored. Nonprofit partners. Nonprofits and charities, we're going to be hearing from Volunteers of America. One of my favorite charities is Junior Achievement, and they're both masters at getting corporate sponsors. But you don't need to do events to get sponsored. So what I'm going to do is I am going to moderate, and then you're going to have a chance. We're going to take a few audience questions. I'm going to ask you all to give everybody kind of a quick tip, one of your best pieces of advice on getting sponsors. So we'll start with Harrison.
I would say, I guess my quick tip advice would be, when creating a proposal, make sure it's a win-win. And, a lot of times it's easy to get in the weeds of your own thing that you're doing. So maybe find a friend or somebody that feel like can give you kind of that outside perspective of like, is this something that would, if you were at this company, you could see the benefit of, whether that's the way you're communicating it, tightening that down, but also, at the end of the day, you want to win-win. You want to, I think you need to look long-term, maybe start out small, build a small relationship with them and show your value. And then that will turn into I'm a big believer in long-term relationships like that.
Thank you. Jan?
Well, as easy as it sounds, my quick tip would be come prepared. Prepared in understanding what my objectives, me, the brand, are, and how your offering is a solution to that objective. Because we don't love anything more than having solutions to our problems. And if you can be them, and it's easy for me to do that, I would engage with you very, very quickly. So come prepared.
Come prepared. Okay. Dennis?
I'm going to play off of what Jan just said. My tip would be, take the time to do your homework and understand, who it is you're going to see. And when you have the opportunity, either to listen in person, to be in person with somebody, or to, even while you're doing research, make sure you're listening. Active listening is very important because it helps you with, comprehend sort of what your prospects' state of mind is, and it also informs your ability to sort of recite that back to him or her, and that can go a long way in helping to build and nurture that relationship.
And that's a common theme that we hear. Every year we do this sponsor and experts panel, and that's something we hear every year from our sponsors is, please do your homework. Please come prepared. We're going to talk about that a little bit later in the content section. But these people are very successful. Their time is extremely valuable. So really, and doing your homework is as easy as just looking at their website, taking a look at their social media, having an IC statement. And what an IC statement is, I see that you're doing this. I know that you're doing that. Definitely ask them questions too, but show them that you're prepared for that meeting. Thank you. Madison.
Yeah, I'm going to kind of piggyback off that as well and just say, for us, we're looking at a lot of long-term partnerships. I think long-term partnerships, it's great to build those relationships. So really understand what their goals are for the next 2 years, the next 5 years, and ensure that your mission and your goals really align, because you don't want to start this partnership and in 2 years, you're going different ways. So ensure when having those conversations, you ask the tough questions to ensure success for those, like I said, 5 to 10 years.
I'm going to ask you a follow-up on that, Madison, because you can do some research, but drilling down to their long-term goals, you can't really find that on the website or out there in the internet space. What's the best way to find out the long-term goals of a sponsor?
Yeah, it's, I would say those high level questions of saying, what are your demographics going to be in years? What does your growth phase look like? What phase are you guys in? Are you guys going to have the resources, in this time frame during this partnership? What's your headcount going to look like? Are you guys going to have the money, the time, the talent, etc.?
Wow, she just gave us a lot of stuff, so I hope you're taking some notes. Thank you.
Maybe Linda, if I could add to that,
sure.
because I see a lot of questions coming up in the.
Talk to each other if something comes up that if you want to piggyback on something one of the other sponsors said, feel free. Go ahead.
I just want to clarify, because I think it's important for the folks on the phone to understand what we're asking is not for you to know every detail of my secret plan that I have, but really have a look at how we show up in the market, because that will give you clues. Well, if we do our job right, we'll have told you precisely what we want and how we see ourselves. And if you then see that M&T Bank positions itself as a community bank and has certain activities it's doing, you can read through it and then with your questions find the details. We're happy, and I'm happy, more than happy to have conversations around the details. So I just want to be clear, you don't feel obliged to know everything. Just get the broad strokes, and then we'll help you through that, through a conversation.
Great, wonderful advice. How about you, Nils? What's a piece of advice that you have for our people?
Yeah, a lot of great things have already been said, but for me, it's really understanding who you influence and who your audience is, and understanding them deeply. I get proposals often of people saying that our product would be great, And we make a lot of really fun products, right? Everyone wants to have a Sea-Doo or a snowmobile, right? Like those are very fun things to have. But the reality is their audience, it wouldn't be a good fit. It wouldn't naturally fit into what they talk about and how they engage with their audience. So I think understanding your audience is really, really crucial when you go into that sell and that pitch opportunity, so that you can really lean into who you're influencing and why it's going to be of value to that brand.
Thank you.
I really love what Neil said. Sorry for interrupting again, but the way we see
No, you've got some great
it's
stuff.
a conversation, right? So we see what we do as a conversation with the marketplace. That's the audience. And the more you can tell me how what you do adds to that conversation and to the audience that I want to talk to, that's the magic, right? So
That's, yeah, that can be digitally.
To, a certain demographic, and you talk to that audience and you have an engaged audience and you can prove it, it's gold.
Yeah, and that can be in real life and that can be virtual, right? It doesn't need to be one or the other or both, right? So I think, we work with many people that are club presidents, for instance, of local riding communities, and they add a tremendous amount of value. But we also work with people with millions and millions of followers because we're looking for broader reach. So I think just understanding the value you're bringing to the table up front and being able to speak to those people that you're influencing is really crucial because that's what you're selling at the end of the day.
Thank you. Christina.
So I'm going to piggyback off of what everyone has been saying, all great tips, and then I'll give you my tip. But just thinking about the audience that a potential sponsor might want to impact. I'll provide a quick example. We've got an event coming up, and because of COVID, it's a much smaller event than we've had in the past. And we have a few prospective sponsors that traditionally come to this event. They're looking for a specific audience to connect with and engage with throughout the 4 or 5 days that we're there. And those audiences aren't going to be at this event this year. And so being creative in how I still connect them with those audiences. So it might be a webinar series. It might be a virtual happy hour that I set up when is convenient for this particular sponsor, but rethinking ways to engage that audience that a sponsor might be looking for really helps add value. So I wanted to piggyback off of what Jan and Nils said. So my tip is very similar to what Dennis said. My tip is make sure that you're actively and always listening for the long term. That includes what the prospect is telling you, what they're not telling you, what you have found in the research, what kind of feedback you're getting in an initial gift. So one of the kind of tips with that, we always take feedback after an event from our exhibit hall vendors, right? So some of our sponsors that come to engage with attendees. We look at those evaluations and reconfigure what we're going to do with that event in the future to make sure that we're giving them the best impact, the best ROI for their sponsorship of Volunteers of America. So I just because a sponsor tells you something one day or 1 year doesn't mean that is going to be the continual goal or the continual impact they're looking for long term. And so just making sure that you're always engaged and really paying attention to those conversations, both spoken and unspoken, I think is really key to long-term partnership.
Linda, can I just add something? But I
have a follow-up question for Christina, and then we'll take Dennis. So Christina, you do an event, right? Because we're going back to live, but we're still got virtual components to it. How soon after the event do you engage with your sponsors and start to build that relationship and get responses from them?
On the last day of the conference. So that's my first opportunity. We do a huge social media and email and kind of anywhere we can post it. We do a big thank you to all of our conference sponsors. We feature their logo. We link those logos to their websites if we can, and personalize those notes where possible. And then that's kind of a general kind of big blast type thank you. And then I do those follow-ups within 24, 48 hours after individually to my contacts with a personal note from me. When I can, I try and do it handwritten. I'm I'm old school that way. I like the handwritten notes. But when I don't have a mailing address, I will do a formal email. Thank you. Just kind of whatever I have available to me as far as information. But literally at the close of the event, I'm already starting those thank yous as part of the stewardship for upcoming years and upcoming events. And again, that long-term partnership.
And that's a mistake I've made in the past, because after my event, I just want to lay on the couch and eat chocolates and watch bad television and collapse. You know, that's the time to do what Christina is telling you to do, to really engage with your audience, engage with the sponsors. Say, hey, we want to thank the sponsors because they've really made this possible. So great advice. Dennis.
And Linda, and sorry, I want to, in terms of timing, you know, usually you're right, after an event or at the close of an event, you're tired. It's, in terms of breakdown and follow-up, it's probably the last thing that you want to be doing. So in that sense, what I actually do is that huge email blast, I set that up before I've even left for the event. And that is an automatic, that's part of my pre-work, if you will, even though it's after the event or post-event. I've set that up and I have that ready to roll. Either through, you know, a mailing, we use MailChimp at VOA, but, you know, through a service that will email blast that to whoever I want to receive it. I've done that ahead of the event so that if I feel like I want to kick back, I can. And then the handwriting is part of that kickback for me. I find that therapeutic.
Thank you. Dennis?
Yeah, just a couple of quick things. We've been talking about knowing your sponsor and knowing your sponsor's audience. When you think about the audience and their customers, think more, don't be afraid to think more broadly. Companies and potential sponsors have more than just customers. They have multiple groups of stakeholders. Employees is a significant group, for example. But you know, other stakeholders that might exist, they might work in a highly regulated industry. So there could be, you know, a regulator stakeholder group. I mean, those are, learning about this various stakeholders can give you a really good view into the business. And then the second point I would make just very quickly is leverage social media. See if a company is engaging on social media, because that's very often where you can see if they're engaging with their stakeholders proactively on social media, and more companies are starting to do that. That's a great way to sort of understand, you know, what their thinking is about their business long term, but also what their thinking is like in the moment. So you can begin to understand what's really important to a particular sponsor in any given moment as well.
Madison, I saw you nodding your head. Did you have a follow-up?
Well, I just wanted to say that, you know, I'll give an example. So this past year, we were going to add another MLS club. And there's 28 clubs, so you're kind of evaluating out 28 people, and it's, you know, it's very time consuming. So something I found useful was, you know, looking at a partner like Body Armor who has partnerships with all of these clubs and going to them and saying, hey, who's the best to work with? Who has the best turnaround time? Who genuinely cares about their partner? So go to those partners of everyone else and, you know, ask those questions. Just be like, who are they easy to work with? Do you enjoy working with them? And they're going to give you an honest answer. So I think you have those connections, so utilize them.
Thank you.
I think,
who has the question?
I was just going to chime in on something about, you know, from the research side of it too. I think, you know, now with social media and I think now more than ever, companies are realizing how differently they have to approach, you know, millennials, Gen Z, and all those, and kind of come up with different strategies. So sometimes I've seen a lot in the past years where there's been a person or a company that is trying to, you know, on the face of it, you look at it and think, oh, well, that's not really my tribe or you know, my crowd. But if you research a little bit, sometimes those companies, that's who they're trying to add to under the umbrella. And so it goes back to that research and reading articles where different people at the company have been interviewed talking about their long-term strategies. And, you know, the goals may be more aligned than you think, and you might not be as big an outlier if you're familiar with. So just research. And I think that's some great points everybody made.
Okay. Harrison, we'll stay with you for a minute. Can you give us an example of a sponsor deal that you did?
Well, I'll tell you one that just happened this year. And this doesn't have anything, well, I guess it does have a little bit to do with pets. So in Tennessee, I run a couple of nonprofit things with different people in the state that have done some big endowments. So one of them is a community grant program. We give away $1 million a year in $25,000 grants to communities across Tennessee, and they have to compete for them. And so I've got a team that runs that. And so it keeps you constantly talking to mayors and things from little tiny towns to Nashville and Memphis and the others. And so there's a museum that had been in West Tennessee that had been kind of getting stale and old as the National Bird Dog or International Bird Dog Museum. And I hadn't been there in a long time as a pet guy. I was actually kind of embarrassed I hadn't been there, but they have a lot of great bones, but it just kind of fallen by the wayside. The state tourism industry wasn't picking it up and promoting it as it needed. And they didn't have all their old corporate sponsorships had run out. So we were there with a group of leaders because Ford is building their big new Ford Lightning EV plant in West Tennessee near this place. And I'm on one of the committees for that. And this is the largest plant Ford has ever built in its history. And so anyway, bird dogs, hunting dogs, field trials, all that. They're building the Ford Lightning, which is the F-150, the EV version. It's a good match. They're going to be manufacturing this, 30 miles away. And so it was an easy couple of calls and some meetings kind of as sidebars and meetings I was already in of, hey, we got this museum over here. It's visited by 12,000 people internationally every year. They need some new sponsors. How about Ford F-150 Lightning being the official truck of the National Sporting Dog Museum? And they were like, of course, where do we sign up? I mean, it was what do you need? And, there was a small ask on a Ford scale, but just something like that was nice. And it's really going to transform and update that museum. And for Ford, it's it's not a small thing, but they're looking to win over the community also. And so it was a very good, fast, quick matchmaking thing that happened that I'm excited about.
And Harrison, I think what's great to that is you guys came with an idea, and I see a lot of kind of empty pitches these days, that are like, look at my channels. It's like, well, what do you want me to see? What am I looking for? And if you're not a known entity, right, it can be difficult to do that. And Ford probably didn't know about the Bird Dog Association,
right.
You know what I mean? But bringing that opportunity and connecting it directly and coming with some meat to the bone, I think is probably why that was successful in the first place.
And let me add, because I'm glad you brought that up. So what I had my video guy, before I went to that meeting, I wanted to come prepared, even though it was kind of a shooting from the hip, but I had him pull a bunch of video clips off of the web and stills of people that had posted things from hunting dogs in F-150s through the years. And so we did a montage and overlaid it with some inserts from the museum. And it just built kind of about a 1.5-minute little visual, quick on the go visual partnership of how that would look or how it could look. And that was an easy seller that I just flipped my iPad around at the meeting, standing in the hallway, showed the Ford guy, and he was like, well, yeah, that was perfect. So, again, going back to just that preparedness thing that everybody's chimed in on also. Sometimes you don't have to do a ton, just a couple little pieces help illustrate what you're trying to convey.
Yeah, and I like the fact that you came to them with an activation idea. We're going to talk about activation, but sponsors, they don't have time to think, and they don't know what you do. So come to them with an idea and maybe 3 ideas, like your best idea, your B idea, and they might like the C idea that you bring to them, but definitely come to them with some ideas because they don't know you, they don't have time to come up with ideas themselves, and they wouldn't have come up with this idea. Nils, I want to stay with you for a minute. Can you walk us through a deal that you've done?
Yeah, I was literally taking notes because I was like, oh man, we work with about 300 individuals on a yearly basis, so it's quite hefty. And what I was going to say about all of them is that they're all different, and I think that's what's really cool about the universe. There's, now there's marketplaces and things like that for sponsorship and other places you can be seen and visible, but you know, the ones that I think are most impactful and happen the easiest, and I think that's what maybe a lot of you guys are looking for, are ones that come through existing relationships with our brand. So, you know, we work with this network of 300 people, right? And that 300 people know another 300 people. And a lot of times they're the ones that are bringing those opportunities to the table, and they're almost pre-vetted because they're coming through a trusted source. And so, you know, I've daisy chained. There's, you know, many of the people I've found have been through one individual that's helped bring in this person, that's brought in this other person, that's tied it back together, and they're all friends. And it's really an incredible. I'm always reminded of how small the world is, honestly, when things like that happen. But you know, it'd be hard to pinpoint one because I've had them come through Instagram DMs, LinkedIn, blind emails, forwarded emails from other coworkers. But the ones, honestly, that are the most successful and the ones I look at the most is when it comes from a warm source, someone that is already connected within my ecosystem and network. So I think looking for those within the relationships that you have is really crucial.
Okay, but what if somebody here wanted to come to you with an idea? They're not part of this chain that you know, this ecosystem of people that you know. What's the best way for them to approach a sponsor, do you think?
Oh my goodness. It's just a hard, I mean, it's such a hard question to answer, right? Because again, they come from so many places. You know, we talked about it earlier, knowing your audience, coming with an idea, and being personalized. I mean, anyone that has the word partnership in their email address or in their title on LinkedIn gets 50 a week that we all look at in the same way. And I think I heard a lot of really great statements. You said the IC statement. I look for that very particularly through people. But oftentimes these brands, and it depends on how big they are very proactive as well. I mean, you heard about Madison. She's proactively evaluating these 28 different MLS clubs to decide which one's the best. So there's a pursuit, and there's the hunt, the prey and the pursuit. And I think it's both ways these days. So it really depends. Most of the business I do is in the pursuit category. So the IC statement is paying attention to something that we've done that's in market, that's on our social media, that's represented on our website. It's identifying other projects or where you've seen us in the market. So I see a lot of questions about the IC statement, and I don't know if that hasn't been talked about, but that's showing me, the brand that's evaluating the opportunity, that you are aware of who our business is. And so for me, specifically, I'm a house of brands, right? BRP is our parent company. No one knows what BRP is, but people know what Can-Am or Sea-Doo is or Ski-Doo. And so when someone emails me and says, hey, you work for BRP, right? I immediately know they have no idea what my company is, because no one says BRP almost ever. So I think it's those little things about being specific and knowing what you're talking about, who you're talking to, that'll make you better known.
Linda, maybe I can add something to this, since the seminar is called Secrets. So most big companies like mine have a portal where that's the muscle memory reaction. Oh, you want to apply? Go to the portal. That in a sense is true, but it's a lot in the portal, and sometimes it may be better for you to get an individual within the firm. So in my case, a branch manager or an employee to do the bidding on your behalf. Because what it automatically does is it generates more attention to that. And so I'm not suggesting that you shouldn't go through the portal, because we do look at them eventually. But if you get someone to advocate on your behalf, a branch manager, an employee of any kind, it helps. So a little secret tip is, if you don't know where to start and don't know anyone and don't have access to the network, creating a mini network from an employee at a branch, in a bank's case, or some other case at a store, if it's the retail store, and creating a relationship there, and then saying, hey, I have this sponsorship idea, what do I do with it? More often than not, they'll help guide you.
Yeah, and I shared before you came on that my first sponsor, sorry, it was with another bank, it was Bank of America, but then I just went into the branch. Because what are they going to do? Kick me out of the branch? And then after that, I got Wells Fargo and I got Citibank. because I'm on the West Coast, your footprint is mostly on the East Coast. So banks have what's called a footprint. So, pay attention to that. But that's what you could do. Just walk in, hit the pavement, do old school, and then create some interest with that sponsor, some interest with the people, and that will lead you to these power players. Madison, would you like to add to that? I saw you nodding there.
No, I'm good. I was just very much agreeing with what he was saying.
All right, now stay with us. I want to hear an example of a deal that you did.
Yeah. So as I mentioned, I recently, so as a brand, I guess it's pretty nice because a lot of these MLS clubs, that's mainly who we work with, they know towards the end of the year we're going to be looking for new partnerships. So usually all 28 teams are emailing and we're trying to figure out a partnership. So for me, I found in partnerships, just be very transparent. So for me, we don't have the budgets of our competitors. So I'm always very upfront with what we're willing to spend in our partnership. That usually eliminates half of the clubs. And then from there, I hop on the call and I say, hey, this is what we want for broadcast. This is what we want for social. And I have it all in an Excel spreadsheet. So those conversations are very black and white and they're very much to the point. And some of those clubs aren't able to fulfill what you need, and that's fine. You can still maintain those relationships, but I think time isn't always on your side, especially when it comes to these larger conversations. So know exactly what you want going into those conversations. And sometimes I even create a little document that's like a give and a get spreadsheet, when it comes to certain assets of the partnership. I'm going to give this, what am I going to get? So creating something like that is super simple and it's easy to bring. So for like me, I report to my CMO. It's easy for me to bring that and show her, hey, this is what we're giving, but this is what we're getting. So it's as simple as that to have those little spreadsheets when going through these negotiations and these conversations.
Now, would you like it if one of your partners did that for you, created a spreadsheet and you could show it to the people, or do you like to create your own?
No, I think it's nice. I've even had it before with, our most recent partnership was Manchester City. And obviously, if you guys aren't familiar, they're a very large soccer club in the Premier League over in the UK. And that's what they did, is they came into this conversation with this model. And I was like, oh, that's genius. It's super simple. We're able to see from both sides, like I think Harrison mentioned, it's a win-win. So from both ends that you're both benefiting.
Okay. I'm curing our viewers. We're going to chat a little bit more, but if you want to ask a question of our panel, please raise your hand, click the raise hand emoji in your reactions, and we'll take some questions before we go to our lunch break. The lunch break is coming up in a little while.
Linda, can I chime in for 2 seconds while
Sure.
people are writing in their questions? Piggybacking a little bit on what Madison said. I think flipping the script a little bit of one of the things that top tips to not do is something that I was guilty of in one of my first sponsorships when I was doing my book tour. And that is, it's up to you if you do a sponsorship with somebody to show what you're doing, after the check's been written and the deal's done, at the end of the day, that person who committed to do the sponsorship with you has to, maybe it's at the year-end budget meeting or whatever, has to sit there in front of a group of peers or their boss and say, hey, we spent XYZ dollars with this person. What did we end up getting in return? How did that turn out? And, for me, I know I did not do a good job years ago in the beginning of keeping up with press clippings and things like that. I assumed, I guess, that they were doing it, and I was on a tour, and it was just, and it lost that sponsorship. I ended up getting it back, but it took some work, and I never made that mistake again. Of it's up to you to serve it up to the person that took a chance on you and wrote a check to be able to, so they can walk into that conference room and say, look at what a great deal, we spent $25,000 or $100,000. Look at all this stuff that we got for it. And as you do that, and that's how you build those long-term relationships. So be really conscious of kind of the after sale part of it, and that it's on you to keep up with the deliverables that you are putting together.
Because the person could change, right, Harrison? The person that was managing that deal could leave, and now they've got a new person in that doesn't know you, that didn't sign the deal, and now you've got to almost resell, right, against that new position that's filled in. So I think being proactive in reporting, right, is really crucial for a lot of sponsors.
Yeah, and I'll add to that by just saying I think partner onboarding is always ongoing. You need to continually update them with your brand and ensure that it doesn't just stop after those first 3 months of the onboarding. You should be continually be doing that and continually be working with them.
Sponsors love a new information pitch. They love it if there's something new that's going on in your company, something that you've done to promote them. Absolutely, like Madison said, tell them about it. Come to them with something turnkey. And we're going to be talking about the fulfillment report. It's also called the renewal report that sponsors like to get. So I love the discussion that's going on here.
I would add to that, Linda, that's true for any information for your industry, right? So if there's moving trends that shake up the soccer industry, to hear it directly from the club you're sponsoring is great before you get it on your social feed. So anything you could say, hey, no, the fair in York, Pennsylvania is moving to this location, or likely it's going to look like this. Any kind of insights are helpful.
Okay. All right. So Harrison said what not to do, and he's learned from experience that, hey, what not to do is not to give them a report, keep up the relationship somehow, show them how they benefit from the sponsorship. I'm just going to leave it to the panel, whoever wants to answer this. What's another thing not to do? What's another mistake that you've seen people make in this industry?
I would say it's good to be excited about your pitch and about your idea, but don't be wedded to it. Because a lot of times what happens, if I'm having a conversation with somebody who's going to pitch me, whether it's for a sponsorship or a foundation grant or whatever, they're going to, if they come in with an overly prescribed idea and it's really, this is the idea, take it or leave it, you limit yourself and you cut yourself off at the knees. Because very often what happens is I try to steer the conversation back and say, talk to me about your organization, talk to me about this sponsorship opportunity and what your objectives are, and then let me talk about my objectives, and then let's see where those intersect, and then maybe what was on your sheet of paper sort of gets pushed off to the side and we create something new together. So I think it's great to be enthusiastic, it's great to love your idea, but don't be disheartened or feel negative if a sponsor wants to sort of diverge from that part of the conversation and explore something new or different.
Yeah, so being flexible. Who else? Okay.
I have one more thing to add.
Okay,
so I think
let me talk for a minute and then we'll go to Jan. So being flexible is so important. Let the sponsor know that what you have is kind of not fully baked, but half baked. That's kind of an expression that we use, and that you're willing to change things. If you say take it or leave it, that's really not a good way to approach sponsors. Right. It's not a good way to build a relationship. Jan?
So I think sponsors on the brand side also look at other sponsors, both in the nature and the quantity. So in terms of your strategy, when you set up, if you're the property, you have to get to a certain fundraising goal. Whether you get that from 1 or 100 has implications on how the other sponsors feel. And if you're looking to place yourself, you're looking to place yourself with like-minded brands, right? So if you're a luxury product, you're likely less excited about partnering with Walmart, right? So you want like-minded to be together. So in terms of your strategy, when you reach out to me and there's 5 other banks already there, I've already stopped listening.
Great. Okay, so we're going to start taking questions. So if you have a question for a particular member of our panel, let them know, or if it's just for the entire panel, anybody who wants to answer. Once again, we're going to please make your questions brief. We're going to try to take as many as possible and make the answers brief so we can get to as many people as possible. So we're going to start with Reggie. Reggie, what is your question?
Yes, so I'm an entertainer, and one of the things I'll make it sure as I can is social media is huge. And if people got on social media and they got huge numbers, brands look at that. Years ago, it was not the case. It was Facebook was a social for kids, and now brands realize the power in it. So if you do not necessarily have a social media following, that is really big numbers, or even talking about, you guys mentioned that about the sponsorships. If you don't have sponsors already, how do you get brands to believe in the vision, or get in the door without having those things? Or can you, I guess, is the short answer.
I can give an answer to that. Often I think the best way to do that is to start small. I think most of us have some access to fungible budgets, and if they're small enough, we can do experiments, and that way you can then pull in a relatively large brand and use that to attract others or to generate that. So if you come in and ask for 6 figures for an unknown entity, you're likely going to have a problem. If you start small, say, let's try it on a trial basis, more often than not, if it's thought through, it should work, if that makes sense. So I would start with the pinky before you try the whole arm.
And then maybe I would say suggest doing stuff with brands that you think fit your audience or the audience you're trying to reach naturally at the beginning, so that it doesn't become kind of taboo later on. I mean, I see a lot of people that have built these massive followerships, but they aren't able to incorporate a lot of branded posts authentically, right? Because it's not really natural in what they've done. So, if you're into illusions and magic, and your audience is younger, maybe, do you go with a Nerf gun kind of, what I mean? Is there any brands that would fit your space naturally that you could kind of tease with or trial with that might end up helping you down the line get noticed by that particular brand?
And Reggie, I don't know anything about what you do except just what's in the background, but going off of his last comments, maybe it's a thing where if you found that where it was Mattel or whoever that might, or somebody, a Toys R Us, somebody that maybe has retail locations, maybe offer to go and do a free show at their headquarters on one of their celebration days at the company headquarters, and then offer to, do a few trial appearances at some of the retail outlets, and then say, if this goes well, I would like to do XYZ plan and build from that, but I'm willing to put some skin in the game up front and show you what I can do, since I don't have the traditional social media numbers. I'm more of an in-person live kind of guy, and let me give you a good sample of what I can bring to the table.
And that's a great idea, Reggie, because then you can leverage their social media. They'll pick you up on their social media. So, talk about a give-get.
Yeah, and I'm going to follow up there, Reggie. If you're new to social media, so I used to manage our social media, and I still manage our influencer program. If you're new to social media, that's fine. Brands, we're not looking for the followers. We're looking for good content. So you're a comedy illusionist, create little Instagram reels, create little snippets, just consistently be creating content. And it doesn't have to be posting every day, but just have that. Because even personally, we'll collaborate, like we'll send products to someone with 1,000 followers if they're creating quality content. It's not about followers, because then you're also looking at engagement. You're looking at so many different things. And if you're creating that quality content, brands are going to want to work with you.
Well, thank God you got that background, Reggie, because now we all know at a glance what you do. He's a real showman. So we're going to move to as many people as we can here. I'd like to talk to Alex. Please unmute, Alex, and ask a question. If it's for somebody in particular, let us know, or if it's for anybody on the panel.
Yeah, it wasn't for anybody in particular. And thank you guys so much for taking the time to learn so much already. I want to inspire and empower the youth market, and I was curious if you guys know certain brands that are more youth friendly.
Can you give us a little more information? That's a pretty broad demo.
Sure.
So
right now I currently, I speak at high school and middle schools, and I wanted to make it so it was easier on the school. And if I have a lot of people that would love me to come, but being that the budget is a factor. If I got rid of that, then I could be able to speak at a whole lot more schools. So that's why I figured sponsorship would be a better avenue. And I was just curious what sponsors you think would be interested in high schools and middle schools.
I would say that there's probably, you know, a list of companies, a list of organizations that, you know, may not be named, may not come to, you know, to our collective conscious right away, but companies that are doing a lot in education technology, okay? Companies that are providing technology to school districts and school systems that are providing content. So, you know, what companies are producing the textbooks? What companies are, you know, providing the, you know, the technology infrastructure for, you know, online learning and things like that. That online learning in particular, coming out of COVID, is something that a lot of schools had to ramp up. So finding out how, you know, who and how, who's responsible and how they've done it in terms of ramping up their technology capacity. You know, you could get a view into companies there that not only, you know, have a vested interest in education, but also have a foothold in the space and can get you in front of people.
And I would say also, right now there's a unique situation nationwide, and I've worked with this program in Tennessee. All the states got some massive COVID relief money for education. So like in Tennessee, we got $5.8 billion to use in various things, from workforce development and community development, different things, but education of middle and high schoolers in different subjects. There's a big pot full of money that every state has right now. So maybe talk to your state's economic development or the higher education, or sorry, secondary education, the government aspects of that, because there is a lot of money sitting there for the next year or two that with a good proposal, you can get some sponsorship from that.
I just want to quickly piggyback on what Dennis and Harrison have both shared. So I think part of it is knowing not just youth, but, and this is to Dennis's point, I think, like knowing specifically what kind of topic you're talking about when it comes to high school, you know, middle schoolers and high schoolers. Where would that fit in terms of impact or industry or interest lines for a prospective sponsor or a prospective donor? The other thing that I would recommend is, and these are two tools that I use regularly when I'm doing research on prospects, both in terms of how can I make a connection there, possible names, and then also what their interest areas are. Where have they funded in the past? How can I tell the story that I'm trying to tell that aligns with what they're interested in based on where they've given in the past? And that would be the Foundation Directory Online. And the other portal that I also use is Grant Station. So these aren't necessarily sponsorship focused. It's kind of foundations and grants on a whole. But from a research perspective, those are the types of places that you can look. You can look for potential funders or prospects and do some pretty in-depth research based on your interest area or your impact area.
Christina, that first one was Foundation Directory. What was the second again?
Grant Station.
Grant Station.
And it's Foundation Directory Online. It recently changed its name. I think it's like Candid, but if you research Foundation Directory Online, it should pop up.
Thank you so much.
Okay,
Yep.
Thank you, Alex. We're going to move on to the next
Appreciate
question.
thickness.
Love this discussion, by the way. Thank you once more. And in 15 minutes, we're going to be taking our lunch break, just so you know, if you're getting hungry or whatever. Joan, what is your question, please?
Sorry, I couldn't find the unmute, get it to do it. My background, what I'm focusing on is coaching and consulting in the major projects and mega events. My experience has been with the Olympics and Paralympics. So at the initial time, I worked for one of the sponsors. But my question is, because of that experience, I know that that sponsorship was 4 years for one event. So how are you guys looking at sponsorships? Are you looking at, okay, like the golf event we did for a nonprofit, another group, it was just for that 1 month. But they had all this work they had to do for a year prior to that. So do you define a timeline, or do you focus on, like, if it's an event, just the event? How do you do that? What's your approach?
I think it depends on the.
Sorry.
I can take it. So from this is my personal experience. I don't know if it's true for everyone. Sponsorships are mid to long term in terms of their impact. Therefore, the project is mid to long term. There are different activities within that project that may be 1 month of the year, and it, depending on the nature of the complexity of that project, may take 6 months, 2 weeks, 10 months to produce. But to me, the full length of the contract is it, and I wouldn't look at each individual item as a separate entity. They all have to work in unison in order to generate the best possible impact.
For the total, okay. And then, because what you talked about earlier, I think Madison brought this up, Harrison brought it up, and several of you talked about it, is being prepared, having the full plan or an idea, and being flexible, because that plan changes. And then at the end, the follow-up is critical. When an event ends, this is what I told somebody in the past, is when closing ceremonies happened, everybody went home except for all of us. Then our day began because we did the decommissioning, the lessons learned, and the thank yous. So I really appreciate that. I think Madison talked, who was it? I think it's Madison or Christina talked about the thank yous. So I appreciate that. Thanks. Jan, thank you.
Thank you, Joe. Okay, and Sherelle, we're gonna go to her next.
Woo! Hello, everybody. How are you? I'm so excited to be here. Linda, good job. Great job so far. I can't wait to get the rest of the information. This is starting off with a bang. Okay. Hi, sponsors, everybody. My name is Sherelle.
Are you on a cruise ship? I think she's on the Lido deck on the Virgin Cruise Line or Empress or something.
I am out of the great state of Maryland. Hi, Jan. Okay, and I also have a business account with MT Bank. I just thought I would point that out real quick. Okay, so everyone, this is my question. I'm in the entertainment space. I'm a writer, producer, creator, host, all of that. And I have multiple entertainment properties. So if we have multiples, what is the best way to approach you? At the top of my list is my movie tour and my game show tour. So that's my short and sweet quick question. What is the way to approach you if we have multiples? Do I stay with one and then let the other one kind of just naturally come into the conversation? Or do I just say, hey, I have a couple of things. Which one do you want to hear about? How does that work?
One tack you might want to consider if you have multiple properties is understanding who, for example, who for the sponsor evaluates and purchases media. So find out who, what marketing agency, what media agency do they use to evaluate and purchase media? Because if you're coming with entertainment properties, it's sort of in that vein. That is a resource. An agency is a resource that can give you a view into the client and maybe help you whittle down that list, and also help you present that list, to a particular client. I think, we talk a lot about going directly to the potential sponsor, and I think in most cases that makes sense. But depending on what it is you have, if there is a particularly a marketing or a media-like value to the property, then it could help you out, I think, considerably, to find out who is doing the media planning and media buying for a particular sponsor, and engage with them first, because they understand sort of what the media strategy is, and they could figure out a way that something that you might be proposing could fit into that.
I would add to that, Sherelle, so maybe your multiple properties have a singular audience. And so, maybe the demographics of your audience is less, fragmented. Because I don't know that if you came to me and said I have these 15 projects, I wouldn't know where to start. So I would maybe see, is there a unifying element between them, and is that something that you can come up with, and then you can provide you can have all 15, or we can only do one, or we can do 2 that combine each other, right? If there's a unifying element, the audience may be a place for you to look. If the folks that consume your movies and your book tour are the same or similar, then maybe that's a way to approach it.
Thank you. Yes, the demographic is the same.
That's good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Let's go to
Very
Let's see,
good.
Susan, let's, Susan Singari.
Mhm.
There. Please unmute, Susan.
There you go. Hi, sorry. I was taping a morning show this morning, so I apologize if this question has already been answered or covered. And thank you for taking the time to speak with me today. I appreciate it. I have a very specific niche market. I cover bare knuckle, which is a sport that is part of mixed martial arts. It's the fastest growing sport in the world. The target demo is 20 to 40 men, about 90%. Women are upcoming as well. I focus most of my efforts on aligning with the audience through YouTube and Instagram. But now we've got TikTok, and I have not really done a lot on Facebook. How do you find out which particular social media platform is the most important to one of the sponsors? Because you can't be everywhere if you want to put out quality content, in my opinion.
Good point.
I would just say, brands follow the trends of consumer groups, and I would say it really depends on the brand. I don't want to speak for Jan, but I don't know if banks are actively pursuing TikTokers at the moment. Maybe that's something that will happen in the future, but a lot more lifestyle brands are, the consumer goods industry, whether that's beverage or CPG, Nike, any one of those is going to be going after that particular audience, especially if youth is at the core. TikTok is extremely fast, and it's interest-based versus socially based. So as a platform, you're getting absolute incredible engagement out of that consumer group because they're targeting you based on what you actually like and what you're interested in, where Facebook was initially built, and Instagram for that matter, based on who you follow. So I think, for a lot of these niche sports, you'll that are growing very, very rapidly, right? Like bare knuckle, you're going to see tremendous momentum in a platform like TikTok. But I think, all in all, like they all have their share of value. And I think someone mentioned it earlier, the platforms are becoming generational, so to speak, right? You kind of know and understand the audience that is engaging on Facebook tends to be a little bit older. But the youth is not on Facebook anymore, and many of them are transitioning into Snap and TikTok and other platforms. So it is challenging, but it's good to kind of spread yourself a little bit and be on those platforms early versus trying to pick it up later.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Susan, I'll just chime in real quick. I think part of this too goes into what everyone has talked about on the panel in terms of doing your homework and research. And I know it's hard when you're targeting a brand if you haven't developed the platform that they traditionally use, right? You're not going to start then just for the sake of trying to engage that partner. But I think, looking into, and I think this kind of speaks to what Nils said, doing the work now of like where these traditional, where your demographic lives, primarily, where they live, and then starting to create content there. And making sure, I think the other thing, and this has kind of been a stream through all this, like making sure you're taking metrics and providing those metrics when you're talking to a prospective sponsor. So how many followers do you have? How much engagement do you have? What type of content do you put out there to Madison's point? What does your social media engagement actually look like? And I think that also includes if you have a website, like what's your website traffic look like? And really using that platform also, I think, I'm sorry, I'm webbing into different things that everyone has said throughout this entire conversation because I think it all ties together, right? So I think it was Jan that shared, showing what the other sponsors or donors or partners that you have can help entice a prospect. It can also turn them off, but in most cases it will kind of help bring them on board, or at least bring the conversation up. So making sure you're highlighting them on your social media platform, on your website, every opportunity that you have. I think all of those things tie together.
And I would say, specifically for what you're doing, because bare knuckle is a lot of MMA guys are transitioning into that, but it's a growing sport. So it behooves them to help throw in their 2 cents to help grow it too. So I would reach out to a lot of the fighters, a lot of the managers of different fighters, encourage them to post different ways, help educate them if they don't know how to do TikTok videos, help their managers, get them engaged and put some of it on their shoulders to like, look, this is raising the tides for all of us. We're trying to build a sport here, so everybody needs to put their best foot forward, and that'll help and grow the engagement. And what was said earlier, with TikTok, it is because of that. It's steering people based on their interests. That would really you'd be able to move that quickly in something as niche oriented as that.
Thank you so much. Very interesting.
All right.
Very interesting.
Thank you. Now, I know we won't be able to get to all of your questions now, but we are not done with these amazing people. What's going to happen now is you're going to come back at the top of the hour, whatever that looks like for you. We're going to take our lunch right now.